Hey everyone, this video is going to be for a manual transmission oil change, and I did this for a Volkswagen Jetta. Mine is a 1998 TDI and it is a manual transmission. So the oil change should be the same for most Volkswagen Jetta generations, especially the Mk3 from about 93 to 98. So the first thing I did here was I warmed up the engine. I drove around the block a few times just to kind of mix up the oil and get it all warmed up. And then here I lifted the front of the car with ramps here. And then I lifted the back with just a jack, and I put some jack stands. And try to get it as level as you possibly can. And then the tools I use are basically a PB blaster, basically penetrating for the bolts there to help them loosen up. And I had a 1/2-inch ratchet here and a breaker bar. And then I also used a 17mm socket, which is the main bolt you're going to basically need to get all these the two bolts off the bottom of the transmission off. So I bought this at Harbor Freight Tools, and it was just a couple bucks. I'm sure you can get it anywhere for less than $5 or $10 at the most. And it's a pretty big bolt, and it's kind of hard to find, but it wasn't really a big deal. So here's the bottom of the transmission here. And I'm looking at right now the drain bolt. That's the bolt you're going to need to drain all the transmission oil from the bottom. And so there's that. And it's pretty easy to find, especially on this car. I don't know if it's the same for all motors. This one's the TDI. Could be different for the 2.0. The Mark IIs might be a little different. The older Jettas, the newer Jettas might be different as well. But it's pretty basic, and I just popped on the 1/2-inch ratchet here with the 17mm socket, and it just came right out like this easily. So just kind of break the torque on it and take it off. Be sure you have your drain pan below, and then here I am draining it into the pan. And this oil actually looked pretty clean. I don't know when the previous owner did it, but that's why I did do it. I was having some shifting problems, and this oil change helped a lot. So just be sure to put down some kind of an oil pan so you can dispose of this later, and maybe some newspapers and or cardboard or whatever you have around under that so you don't spill any. Then after I let it all drain out here, I close it back up. And also, I forgot to mention, be sure you take off the fill plug first, because you really want to be sure that you can open it up so you can actually fill the oil in before you drain it, because if you drain it and you can't break the torque on that, you're going to have issues. And you might even have to tow the thing or something ridiculous to get the job done. So there's just some of the oil that dripped out, and I saved a little bit of it just to look in it, and I wanted to just check it for metal shavings and all that to make sure my transmission wasn't damaged, and I didn't find anything. So the reason this video has no sound is because actually my microphone broke on my camera, and I did fix it, but the only problem is it just didn't work when I was filming. So here I'm just filming the bolt that I put back on. I screwed it on pretty tight, and once it got really tight, I just gave it an extra little, maybe 1/4 to 1/2 turn, and it's not something you want to over torque or under torque. And definitely look into Volkswagen specifications for that. I didn't do that, but that's me. So here I'm just showing this kind of funnel thing I used to fill it with the transmission oil, and I bought that at where did I buy that? They had that at AutoZone for $4.99. I also seen it at Pep Boys for $5.99, and they even have them at Walmart probably for like $4.50. And basically I just wired that down. It's a funnel with basically a pipe. I put the pipe in the transmission, and I ran it up to my engine so I could have kind of gravity do the work for me, because I was trying to squirt the transmission fluid with the bottles, and that didn't really work out too well. But anyway, here's the Mobile One I used. I used 75W. 90 here, and it's fully synthetic by Mobil 1. There's probably better oil you can use that's Volkswagen grade synthetic, but this is what I used, and I have had no problem shifting after this. So I've also done it it's been a few thousand miles now, and everything's running great. So it's up to you. This is what I used. And this is just me filling this up here into the transmission, checking for leaks. Make sure none comes out of your drain bolt. And also, basically when you know it's filled is when it's leaking out of the fill hole. That's just pretty much it. That's the only way to really check. And make sure your car is at ground level, and that's how you know. So as you can see here, it's overflowing. And that's pretty much when I knew that that was enough. And I think the spec Volkswagen said in the manual is, I forget, I think it's 2.2 quarts. So I just actually bought 2 here because I figured there might be some I couldn't drain out, and of course there was. And pouring 2 right in there was the perfect amount. I couldn't get any more in because it was just overflowing. And basically I just popped that bolt back on, and I'm done with the job. And here I go into my car, and I just kind of test it out, shift around with the shifter here, and I put my foot on the clutch, and it already started to feel a little bit better because it was shifting really roughly. And then right after that, I just drove around the block a couple times, just making sure it all felt right. And it did. And so that's basically that. Just leave a comment on the channel or on this video, or send me a message, and I'll give you any help or pointers that I have. But that's how I did this, and there weren't any videos on YouTube on this that I could find, that unless I found something pretty crappy with a cell phone or whatever. And it's just me driving around, and it shifts much nicer now. So if you're having kind of a clanky transmission, or you're shifting and it's just kind of lagging, or you really have to use effort to just put it in the shifter and it takes a long time, then I would recommend doing a transmission oil change. It's helped out a lot, and thanks for watching.